My name is Jesús Solis Trevino. They call me Jesse Trevino. That's Jesse. Some people have IE. I think one of the young ladies here in the audience is Jessica, so it's mi tocaya.
Okay.
Anyway, I was born in Alice, Texas, in Jim Wells County here in Texas. And I was born on a day that I give everybody a day off, because it's December the 25th, 1925. And I guess I could start, graduated in 44 from William Adams High School in Alice.
And who are your parents? And
My
where-
parents
where are they from?
Asensio Trevino, who was worked in a grocery store, a wholesale grocery store also. And my mother is Martina Solis Trevino. And it was a very modest family. I mean, we didn't have any wealth or anything, but a very happy family surroundings and bringing up. We've never had any trouble. We always had something to eat during the Depression and everything, but we were very lucky to have had parents that we have. There was two others in the family. My brother, who was the oldest, Fortino Trevino, and then my sister, Zulema Trevino, who was right under him. And I was the last one, I mean, that was born in the family, and I was the youngest one. And the only one left right now. They both passed away years ago.
And your parents, Mr. Trevino, where were they from?
My mother was from Alice, as far as we know. My father was from Alice also. He was born there. And his parents came from the border, from Mexico, and right across Roma or Rio Grande, you know, the Escobares and those places. But they were all originally from, their parents were originally from Mexico. And they came over for the good life. And at that time, Alice was just getting started. And it was a railroad that went from Houston or where is it, Corpus Christi to Laredo, and then they had the SB that went south. And we were surprised. During the war, there were people that said that they had first target and second targets, and they said that Alice was one of the second targets. They would, why Alice? You know, well, they said because of the railroad. They had a crossing, and as a result, they thought if they could knock that out, they wouldn't get any supplies or whatever the railroad would carry. So I don't know what you want me to keep on.
Can I
ask him a question? How much did your parents emphasize education? That's one question. And the other is, how well prepared were you in English to go when you started school there in Alice? Tell me about your experience, early education there.
My early education was in Alice, was the typical education that would you get in South Texas. I mean, it's the same. We were segregated, all the Mexican Americans in one school and Anglos in the other. And even in Alice, even if the Mexican American was right across the street of elementary, they had to go all the way south to go to the Mexican American. And that's the way it was. And I was fortunate. I don't remember not being able to speak English, you know. I guess we practiced it at home before which was not very common in those days, to speak Spanish, but I don't remember ever having to do what a lot of the children that come from Mexico right now, that they're not up in they don't know anything about the English language. So we were very fortunate in that respect. And the teachers kind of liked me, I guess. I was very...
Who can blame them?
No, but I was a good kid. I never got in trouble, you know, and give the teacher or anybody. In fact, the teachers used to come to our house and visit with us and everything. And I have a desk, I don't know if you're familiar with the desk that rolls up and it has the pigeonholes inside and two drawers. Well, my dad bought that when I was in the first grade. First or second grade. It cost him $8. And
A roll-up desk.
a roll-up desk, yeah, little bitty thing like that. And we still have it. And I remember bringing the teacher that was my teacher to show him the desk that I was studying all the time. So I guess you could say that my parents believed in education in that respect by bringing me to something like that. I loaned it to a cousin of mine, and he had it in the garage one day, and I visited him, and I said, I'm going to take this back. And it cost my wife a fortune to have the desk redone, but we still have it as where we put the telephone there in the house. But it's something that we treasure a lot from way back on there.
Mr. Trevino, your father worked at a grocery store?
Yes, first he worked for a wholesale grocery store where they used to go out from Alice. They would go to San Diego, Benavides, Hebron, and all those little towns, and go into La Chona. I don't know, Concepcion they call it, but it's La Chona they call it. And they come out and 281 at Palito Blanco and Ben Bolt and all that. And I used to go with a salesman, and there was no restaurants or anything else. You had to buy some canned goods, to eat in the field.
When your father was a salesman for...
No, he wasn't a salesman. He worked for the grocery.
He worked for the grocery store?
Yes, sir. He delivered the groceries after the salesman took the orders.
I see.
For the little stores that were in those little towns.
So, your father then spoke English as he did that work?
Yes, he knew some, but he wasn't, but he spoke English, yes.
Okay. And did your mother work outside the home?
No, my mother never worked. They had a store at one time before I was born, and I don't know what happened, but they didn't have it when I was growing up.
Did your mother speak English?
Yes, very much so.
Did
She
your
did
mother-
more than my father.
Did she go to school in Alice?
Yes, but not about the 4th or 5th grade, I would imagine, like that. She was, remember, a big family, and I don't know, we just didn't.
What was the name of the elementary school you went to? Do you remember?
Yes, sir. Nair School. It's funny that Nair School that's where I went to school. Well, elementary, there was no junior high. You just went on to high school. But after I finished at the University of Texas under the GI Bill, I wanted to get married, and the only place I could save money is to go live with my folks, so I wouldn't have to pay rent, or they fed me, for the days to save money. And I thought the only job I could get was teaching school. They had gotten a raise, and it was $2,400 a year, and that was about $200 a month. But I enjoyed teaching that job. It was the 6th grade, and the 2 other friends of mine who was teaching there in the 6th grade gave me the smartest kids, and I guess you could say I gave the principal a hard time, because I was about 25 years old, had some big ideas about the university and all that, and so I decided to take 12 students from Alice to Austin in San Antonio, and the principal said, "You can't do that." They didn't even take him to the fire station there in Alice, and this young kid was going to take him all the way to Austin and San Antonio. I said, "Well, we're going to go on a Greyhound, that bus." And so they made the trip on $11 each. That's what it cost them to go for the hamburgers, and that's all you ate, hamburgers. And I made arrangements at the University of Texas, where I stayed at Co-op, that to sleep and have the breakfast, and with just boys, because I couldn't get a lady to go with me to have chaperone, to take girls. So I took about 12 of them and showed them the university. I had been a grader to one of the professors, and he let me take the students into the classrooms And they were amazed, and they said, "You'll be ready by the time you finish high school." And they were, and they had the power show where they show all the new inventions that the engineers had for that year. I remember seeing the first time that you put your head on that and the water would come out, like we have now, all the facilities, restrooms and things have the automatic deal, you know. Anyway, I remember taking them to the Capitol and showed them where the laws were made, the governor's mansion and everything, and then I put them on the bus, and there, the first place we went to, I put them at the YMCA. It was 50 cents a piece. And I took them to the Alamo, and I showed them the names of Mexican Americans that owned land and were fighting the Mexicans that was coming in from Santana and all the rest of them that were coming in. These people that own land here had more to lose than the ones that they're going to read about in the history books in the high school, Crockett and Bowie and all those particular adventures that are at that time were I don't know what's in the books now, but in those days that's all you had. The heroes were the Crockett's and Bowie and all those things. But there were some Mexican Americans that had a lot to lose besides losing the battle, you know, that they owned land and they were going to lose all of that. And so then I took them to the zoo. They had never seen a tiger, a lion, or an elephant in person. They'd seen in pictures of it and everything. But they learned a lot. And then finally, I introduced him to my girlfriend, who was my fiancée. I was going to marry. Oh, mister, you got a girlfriend.
Uh-huh. Now we know. Now he says. Now the field trip makes sense.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, way to go, Mr. Trevino.
Yeah.
Good values, and then you said the
And
girlfriend.
I really, I really think that those students learned more on the field trip than they did with me in the whole year that I was there. But one of them, there were several of them, I'm sure, that went to college and everything. But one of them is he was the one that gave me the most trouble in class because he was very smart and started picking on the other guys when he get through making the lessons. And he always tells me, he said, if it hadn't been for you, I would have not have come to Austin. And he went to the University of Texas, graduated as a pharmacist, and is a very successful businessman, and he sold his pharmacy, and now he has an organization that gets SBA loans and bank loans together, and now I'm working for him. I'm the one that represents his organization for the whole valley.
Can I ask you about, you said it was segregated school in elementary.
Yes, sir.
From there you went right to high school.
Yes,
Was
sir.
it segregated in high school also?
No, you couldn't. You just had one.
Yeah, okay.
And they still just have one in Alice.
And I want to ask a follow-up because I don't know, we're kind of like, I listened to the interview and each of us has a different direction. But how much of an impact did going from Alice, Texas into the military have in terms of changing your outlook and giving you confidence about coming back and telling the principal, this is what I want to do with these kids? In other words, how did the military shape your development as a person and as a future leader in the community?
Well, I had never really been out of the Alice, maybe go to San Antonio or something like that, but very seldom. My dad didn't have a car or a truck or nothing. And in fact, I didn't know how to drive. I graduated from high school and went to the service for 3 years, went to the university for 3 years, and I still didn't know how to drive because I've never had a car. And the only car we bought was a taxi that my cousin had that he was going to get rid of, and my roommate was supposed to teach me how to drive at the university. And I'd be darned if he didn't have an accident with it, and he didn't get killed or anything, but he got hurt. So we lost the car.
Huh.
So I didn't get to have the first lesson on it. But anyway, it was different, getting into the service, because it's a different life, that you're not really used to But I enjoyed being in the service. I took my basic in Wichita Falls, and then from there they sent. I didn't qualify in rifle or a gun or anything, and they made me a ball turret gunner on a B-24. So they sent me to Laredo to train as a gunner, and I trained there, and they trained you real good. We shot a skeet to where you got to shoot ahead of time, just like you do to the plane with a 50 caliber machine gun. And so we learned that. I got to where I could knock about 24 out of 25 skeets, out, and then they put you in a pickup and do the same thing, go around the field, the pastures, you might say, and then they let those skeets go out, and then you have to put them down, and then they train you how to get it apart. The 50 caliber machine gun are big, and put it together, and then you have to do it blindfolded with gloves. And that was quite a job because the instructor would hide parts, so you would have to know just what you were doing. Because when you're up in the plane and it's dark, you don't want any light because the enemy would see you and they could shoot at you. So we trained real good as a basic, and we formed a crew in California, and then I was stationed in Walla Walla, Washington, and we did our flight training there. We'd fly to California and back at night or something like that. But
so you were a World War II
World War
era veteran.
Yes, sir.
So they actually.
I was there from 44 to 47.
Okay.
3
so
years.
When Hitler surrendered, you were on the West Coast here.
I was in the West Coast, ready to go at Merced, California. We were going to go. In fact, the pilot is still alive. He and I were the only ones left. About, I think there were 10 or 11 crew members at that time, for B-24s, and I was what they call the ball turret gunner at the bottom of the plane, and I would have to bring it down and then bring it up when we couldn't land with it down, and so we were trained real good, by cross country and everything that we shot out of the waist and low flights, to where you could shoot targets in the ground.
So you were then back home in 1947.
Yes, sir.
And in 1947 is when you made the decision that because now there was this GI Bill.
The GI Bill, I don't think my folks could afford it to send me to Austin and the University of Texas. And the GI Bill gave me I would get all the
Tuition?
The tuitions and all the expenses of the university, even the extra curriculum, I guess, I don't know, athletic
The passage?
the passage, you would get that too for the football games and everything. And we would they would give us $75 a month, to live on. But in a co-op, it was a very, I don't know if they have it here at the University of Texas, Pan American, but a co-op, we were 80, and we had meals. We had hired one lady, a cook, and the rest of us would do the work of assistant cooks, pots and pans, and waiters, and all that, and we would. I don't know what these students that are here are paying for tuition, not tuition, I mean for food and lodging, but it cost me $32 a month, room and meals. And then I got my girlfriend, and she lived in Austin because she was a friend of the family or something, and she had to take a bus to get to the campus. But I got her into a girls' co-op, and her fare for room and board for a month was about $28 a month. And it's I know
it was a working place though. You had to.
Yeah,
work
you had
for
to work. Yeah,
you had to
and if you had the majority of the guys with you, and we did. I mean, my group, we got to be the vice president. They paid you $10 a month, But then you get to assign all the different things, the waiter and pots and pans and everything. You put your friends on the easy job and put the other guys on the pots and pans and things. So it was.
So what did you study at the University of
I
Texas?
studied international trade, business administration. I was supposed to go to Argentina, somewhere in South America, and make it rich over there. And everything. Instead, I got engaged and got married 18 months later, after I graduated. And my wife graduated as a pharmacist. And there were not many pharmacists in those days. In her class, there were only 5 girls that graduated from pharmacy. And she graduated at the same time I did, 1950. And we got engaged el día 5 de mayo, 1950. And then I had to go for my ring all the way to New Orleans because my brother was working for a jeweler or something over there, studying to be a jeweler, and he said he would get it to me at cost and all that. I don't know. I still don't know, but it was a nice ring. She liked it, and she still has it.
Where was she from?
San Antonio.
So
And we met.
You still have the same wife? I'm guessing.
62 years, sir. And we have 2 children. It was funny because we went out to eat at Mother's Day at Las Palmas Hotel. He said, 3 senior citizens. My son is already 61.
Oh my God.
So I never had used it. It just sounded funny, seeing him. And he worked for La Jolla Schools. And my daughter taught school for, I think, 25 years. 25 years. And she does a little substitute work over there in San Antonio. And she's right in the middle of the worst area in San Antonio. They're real rough kids out there.
So after you got married in 1952,
51, yeah.
Did you come to the Rio Grande Valley?
No.
No?
Well, let me back out a little bit. When I got out of university, I taught school for 1 year. And then after I was going to get married, I was working for an ocean freight broker that I wanted to get into my field that I got my degree on. And then a compadre of mine who just passed away last year, Juan Luján, Dr. Juan Luján, said that Dr. Sanchez, who was our professor at the University of Texas in education, I'm sure you're familiar with him. George Sanchez. And he says he's looking for Mexican Americans to apply for the Labor Department to be compliance officers for the Bracero program. The Bracero program was going to Mexicans from Mexico come over here on the contract, and the Mexican consul represented the worker, people from Mexico, and the compliance officer with the Labor Department represented the growers. And when there was a dispute on the contract or wages or whatever, the consul and the compliance officer would get together, and they would be judge, jury, and everything, and we decided there what the employer had to pay and the worker had to accept, And so we were able to have good relationships, so we didn't really have that much trouble settling them. But Dr. Sanchez had in mind that if you were Mexican American, you would be you do a lot better job by speaking to them and explaining whatever disputes there were. And I had to go in Raymondville and settle some strikes that they wanted to go on strike and all that. I would have to go talk to them and everything. And the employers were very, very good because they wanted to have contracts for the following year, So when the Bracero program was in progress, it was very good at that time.
So you worked for the Labor Department?
Yes, sir.
For how long?
Oh, for a couple of 3 years, because they had Eisenhower and others, and they would bring in workers from South Carolina and North Carolina and Tennessee and up in there. They didn't know Spanish or anything. They didn't understand anything, and they put them over us. And in some cases, so you didn't have a chance to get promoted But I was making more money than I did as a teacher or anything like that we had before.
So, just to back up to your teaching year or two,
Hmm.
you taught in a segregated school
Yes.
because it was not the high school; it was the
No, it's
school.
elementary school. Yes, sir.
And so, a Mexican American teacher teaching at a Mexican school, then takes students to the university.
Yeah.
Sixth graders.
They didn't do it. I
You
did
did.
it. I did, but
Yes.
they didn't do it.
But how rare was that? Like, I'd never heard that story before.
Well, I don't know what made me do it, but I just thought they would get something out of it. That they would get. I wanted them to see that there was a possibility. Just like right now, all of us are working to get not just to finish high school, but to go to college, like some of the students that are here today. I'm real proud to have the opportunity to encourage them, not only just to get your bachelor's degree, get your master's degree and doctor's degree. How many doctor's degrees did we have in my days? Nothing. Dr. Sanchez was one of them. There were two Mexican Americans at the university teaching. That was Dr. Sanchez and Dr. Castañeda. Dr. Castañeda was a history professor. That one of the greatest things he did was that Mexico had a big revolution over there, and somebody from up there had sense enough to bring a whole library into the University of Texas because of Dr. Castañeda. And that they have the Latin American library there at the University of Texas, and it was because of what he did to bring those books and other things that they had there that didn't lose it, because they were burning everything up over there in Mexico when they had the revolution. And Dr. Sanchez was the greatest. Dr. Sanchez, I'm sure you know about it, that fought all these cases that Gus Garcia, the attorney from San Antonio, who at one time he appeared before the Supreme Court of the United States, and he was able to be given extra 15 minutes. That was never done. Very rarely was that ever allowed to have. But they gave him. It was a very emotional thing, that happened. That they were fighting the case, where
Hernandez.
yeah,
The
the Hernandez case, yes, sir. And it's something that we got to meet Gus and Dr. Sanchez and all that when we were at the university. My wife played the piano, and another fellow played the trumpet, and I played the drums. So we furnished the music for the groups, that we had there. But it's a good situation.
So
we had a good experience.
When you took the sixth grade students to Austin, you said that you a professor had helped you facilitate some
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
Was that J. Frank Dobie or was that George I. Sanchez?
No, it was one that I had been a grader, and he was from South America.
Oh.
But I had been his grader for the last.
Did you get to know J. Frank Dobie?
No, sir.
He was from Alice,
Yeah, he was.
and he was kind of a racist.
Yeah, he was.
And he's the one that Americo Paredes went after
Yeah, he did.
intellectually.
Uh-huh.
For
But it
talking, folklore.
There weren't, like I said, the two professors that we had was. There might have been others, but we were the ones that. Dr. Sanchez used to send students, especially students that some of you know, like Rafael Flores, the attorney, and Bob Sanchez, I think he was also, and I don't know if you ever met Chris Alderete. Chris Alderete was a lawyer, and he was my roommate, and he was very fortunate to get into politics. In fact, he was the youngest district attorney out there in Del Rio. I don't know what the county is. Anybody know? But anyway, in Del Rio, and he got into politics when Benson got in, and we knew Benson pretty well. We got him a job with him, and he went to Washington, and he was there for many years. Chris Alderete.
Aldrete.
Yeah. And he worked for the senator. He worked for Kika La Garza when he was a congressman there. And then he also worked for the National Democratic Party. That's when he got us an invitation to the White House when Lyndon Johnson was there. And my wife and I attended in 1968. There were about only 60 couples that were there. And we were honored to have been there, and I had dinner. After dinner, drinks, and then I went over and had a program. Anita Bryan, the famous singer, she was a program with a marine, with a band, marine band, and then we were standing there, and I told my wife, he's coming over towards us. He was with Humphrey, and had him with the arm around him.
The president was
The
coming.
president was coming toward us. I said, so he could come to us. So he gets to us, and he told Humphrey, he said, have you met the Trevino from my home state of Texas?
Oh, wow.
This been about an hour before that we were introduced, By the way, when we were introduced, we were aligned, the important people first, the cabinet members and the foreign dignitaries and everything, and then they put you by alphabetical order. So my wife was practicing thank you, Mr. President, for inviting us, and they do it, and she was trying to make it up. When she got to the president, there's a man there that speaks out and tells the president who you are, Mr. and Mrs. Jesse Trevino from McAllen. And he took my wife like this, and he kissed her on the cheek. He said, my, but you look lovely, Mr. Trevino. And she doesn't know today what she said to him. And she went to Lady Bird, and she said, I'm going to be in the valley in a few days or a few weeks or something like that, because she was working on these flowers on the roads, and everything. So it was a very funny thing. And then I said, can you imagine, when we got to the hotel, he said, can you imagine that the president was able to say, Jesse Trevino from my home state of Texas? He says, my wife always brings me down to my level. He says, that's no big deal. There were two Mexican-Americans, Santos Esteban of New Mexico and Trevino from Texas. There were two bankers and you from Texas. So, yeah, he ought to know that Trevino was from Texas. So she got me down to the real thing, that it wasn't such a big deal.
Jesse.
Yes, sir.
Just a small anecdote that you told, some time ago you told me about it and my nephew, about when you were working for the Labor Department and you were able to get your champagne for your wedding at a really good price. Do you remember that story?
Yeah. Well, that's smuggling. But anyway, when I was working for the Labor Department, they were going to have a big national conference in Fort Worth. And they told my boss, my local boss here in San Benito, that's where I live, and he said, get us 2 cases of tequila. We want to make margaritas over there at the I think. So I called my good friend at the Mexican consul, he says, vice consul, and he says, Romeo, do you think you can get me 2 cases? No, I can't, but the consul in Brownsville, he'll get it for us. So we went to a consul and myself from San Benito to Brownsville, and the consul there, Soto, it was Dominguez, I think his name. Anyway, we get there and it says, yeah, we can get it for you. Eduardo, another consul there, said, take my car, the consul's car, we had the consul and everything else. Llévalos a las 2 repúblicas, a Matamoros, y van a cruzar unas 2 cajas de tequila. And I thought we're going to get a permit and all this, go through the whole procedure. No, we went across, and Romeo and this other consul that was with me from San Benito, I said, he didn't get anything, and he didn't give an order or anything. We went and bought the 2 cases, and I said, since we're going to bring these 2 cases, I put in about 3 bottles of Bacardi, cheap stuff, we didn't have too much money. Anyway, we brought it across to the border, and they didn't declare it at all. If I'd opened that trunk, they would have seen all the 2 cases of tequila that was there. And we said, pásenle, we on. And this guy that was, Eduardo, who was driving, saw a lady that he knew, and he stopped the car. I said, why do you have to stop? Let's get out of here. And she said hello and all that thing, and kissed her on the cheek and everything. And then we took her to a thing, and we took it from this car to my car. And then when I got to San Benito, I gave it to my boss. I said, here's the cases that you wanted. And said, you take it from here to Fort Worth. If they catch you, that's your business. Just pay me for it. I think tequila was 50 cents a bottle at that time. But that's the only time that I ever smuggled anything like that.
So when you worked for the Labor Department, you were based out of San Benito.
San Benito, yes, sir.
How long were you in San Benito?
Oh, I was, well, not too long, because we moved to Harlingen. And we lived in what they call, and it's still there. It's a, when you come out of the airport, there's a little housing authority there that for the poor. You know, that's where we were, and we rented there. And it was because my wife was working as a pharmacist, but I wasn't making too much money. I was making $4,000 or $5,000 a year, and we paid $30 rent, and that included the light and everything. You know, just $30 a month.
So when did you come to McAllen?
That's a good question. They closed the Harlingen up, the Bracero Center, and they shipped me to El Paso. We lived there for several months, and that's where my son was born in Harlingen. And there at Harlingen, they discriminated, you know, that my wife wanted to be in with another Anglo lady that they met at the doctor's office, and they couldn't be in the same room. They had a room just for the Mexican Americans, it's Beverly Baptist. And when that room got full, they put you in a hallway if you're a Mexican American. And the Anglos had their own room, or two to a room. And there was a lot of that going on. And anyway, we were in El Paso, and my daughter was born there, and it was a lot of difference anyway. We came from El Paso to McAllen, and that was in '54. I came here to McAllen with a 10-day-old baby and a 19-month baby, and then we rented here and then bought here and built in later on, '68, and we just moved from the original house that we had bought here.
So in the 1950s, when you landed in McAllen, it wasn't long before you got involved in some
Yes.
local politics.
I got involved quite a bit, and I was a member of the school board for 11 years. I was there for 9 years, and then the fellow that took my place passed away, and the board named me back on the board. But there were, you know, when we got to McAllen, they would tell you how many school board members they wanted in there. One Mexican American, that's all you were allowed, and one in the commission, city commission. And not only that, they picked him for you, so you couldn't pick the one that you wanted. Let's say a group of Mexican Americans would decide, well, Juan Cuerdas here would be named by. No, the Anglos would pick somebody that would just sit there and say nothing. And I took the place of a fellow that was named by the board because he was going to run for JP. So in the first meeting that I went to, I started asking questions because I had not been to a school board meeting. And the Otho Brand, who was in the board, I don't know if you know him or have heard of him, but he was the mayor of McAllen for 20 years or something like that. And I started asking questions. He said not to ask any questions. I said, wait a minute. I thought if I addressed the president, he would allow me to speak or not to speak. I'm not Dario Garcia, I'm Jesse Trevino. And I'm going to ask questions whenever the chair recognizes me, that I can speak. So from there on, it was all downhill. He and I were battling at all this, and like the first time, the first time that I wanted to go to this bilingual education, bilingual meeting, the first one in the nation, I thought that the board should pay my expenses to go over there and back.
Because you were on the school board.
I was in the school board, and I was going to bring some information that I thought was going to be valuable, and also was against it. He said, "No, we're not going to pay for your trip over there." And so, and I was just getting started with my insurance business, and I didn't have enough money. But we had a group of Mexican American groups of all older men, that were originally here from McAllen, like Ruben Cardenas' dad, D.V. Guerra, the father of the sheriff, grandfather of the sheriff that's been appointed, Eddie, and others, Contreras and others. They got their money together, and I think I made the trip on $300 or something like that, and that's how I was able to go. Also, was offered it to me for the whole thing. They said, "No, I don't take money from you."
You mean out of his pocket?
Out of his pocket. I said, "No."
Because he didn't want school money.
No
to
school
fund
money
it.
going for something like bilingual aid. He just didn't care to have that. But I went anyway, and then it was a good conference. There were some people there that became the leaders in the bilingual education. I'm sure you know Joe Bernal, who used to be a senator, a state senator, and Dr. Jose Angel Cardenas, Al Ramirez, his dad, Robert's dad, Dooley, who used to be his boss, and the one that went there as a politician was Yarbrough, had just gotten it started. And we met with him, and we didn't have enough money between us. What a suite for, instead of having an individual room, we had a suite, and so we were in a couch and beds and floor and everything else. And we had the senator there. And the senator was so interested in bilingual education that these others, I couldn't participate too much on it because I was green compared to what Al and others had experience with it. And he said, "Look, we got to go to the banquet." We go to the banquet. He said, "We'll come back over here and the suite, and we'll keep on discussing it." So as a result of that, we came back to the room, and we there about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning with him and explaining everything to him. So when he got back to Washington, he started drafting the bilingual education law that came about, and that's how bilingual education started.
So when you say that it cost you about $300 to go, did you go with other people? Did you
Oh, yes.
Who went?
We flew over there and went over there.
Who is we?
Well, like I told you, Joe Bernal, Al Ramirez,
Joe Bernal was in San Antonio at the
San
time.
Antonio. We knew each other,
Okay.
and at the same time, Dr. Cardenas was also. I met Dr. Cardenas while I was at the university. But anyway, that's people that were interested in having that bilingual. And this is the first time that we ever got the real truth about how you could go about teaching this bilingual education. And that's I could say that Yarbrough was really the father of the original law that was passed. And
So if you can take us to those moments, say between 10, 11 o'clock at night and about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, what was the environment like? It was like 4 or 5 of you, and
No,
the senator sitting in the middle.
Yeah, we would
Who
all
talked the most?
the ones that knew the most.
Who?
Well, I'm talking about Dr. Cardenas, Al Ramirez, and Dooley, and those people that were dealing with it on an everyday basis. You got to remember that Region 1 was the one that started here, going out and teaching the school districts everything. By the way, I was in the Region 1 board for 9 years after I left the school board. And so I was in the school board and then the Region 1. And then I've been member of IDRA, not IDRA,
Either?
IDRA, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was chairman for 32 years on that. But it's been education. That's what I believe in. I believe that we can't get anywhere unless we educate all our masses. I don't mean just high school. I'm talking about college. And there's some trade schools that are good. They're making good money, and some of them go to trade school and then go to the other colleges and have a way of paying their expense to go to school. So one of the things that I'm also proud of having doing that, we were going to meet with the coordinating board. You know, the coordinating board is the one that brings in, does things for the universities and everything else. And they were coming to McAllen to meet here. And also Brand, and about 40 of us together, and even the congressman that we have now, Ruben Hinojosa, was part of the committee. We're going to meet here in McAllen, and we met, and also wanted to have a vocational separate from Harlingen, the one they have there right now. What's it called? The
TSDC.
TSDC. He wanted another one here, but separate from them. And I knew that that wasn't going to happen because I knew a lady that worked for the coordinating board, and I knew the chairman of the coordinating board, who is the daughter-in-law of Morris Atlas, an attorney here from McAllen. And in fact, she's a federal judge now. Anyway, that it was not going to happen. So we voted on it a night or two before the meeting, and everybody raised their hand and said, we're going to go in there and united and all sort of thing. And then after they all voted, they said, who's against? And I raised my hand and also said, we know what you want, Jesse. We're not going to go for that right now. But if we don't get it, then we're going to go after a community college here in the Valley. Because it was the only area that did not have a community college.
That's what you wanted.
That's what I wanted. But I wanted not vocational only. I wanted both. Academic and vocational. And that's what we got. I mean, also Brian kept his word. The board, coordinating board said, you can't have both of them. We're going to turn it down. So we did. So then he came back and said, okay, the same group, let's get a coordinating board. I mean, a community college. And we all went on it, and I never thought or dreamed that this South Texas College, now it's called now, we have the enrollment and the number of students that are taken. And the students should take advantage of it because they save money by going there.
You were one of the founders of STC?
Yes, sir. I was supposed to be named, but certain group here from McAllen said that if they would do that, they would not let the facilities do, because they needed some facilities first, you know.
They were going to name a building after you?
No, they were going to name it to the board, original board.
Oh, to the original board.
That's when Ann Richards was governor. And it was the McAllen School Board that did it, but it's all passed.
So, Mr. Trevino, if you can think back to 1966 and the years around that, especially about that conversation with the senator, and then what in the next, say, 10 years, you would have learned about bilingual education.
Yes, sir, I did.
Can you speak to what your view on bilingual education was back then and what it is today?
Well, I wasn't in the schools, of course, you know, I couldn't tell you exactly what was going on, but there were a lot of schools that went for it and took advantage of it. And I think it's a very successful one because, like I told the school board when I was there, when I came back from the conference, I said, I'd like to have any of you or all of you go into a room in Japan and start Japanese, talking, you know, speaking to you in Japanese, you'd be lost. That's what those kids are going through. You have to the procedure of starting with what you know and then go on to the next, the English, you know, and trying to get everybody to the position that they can understand both Spanish and in English.
What do you remember that Al Ramirez did with bilingual education?
Oh, he was the father, I think, of the whole valley here. He was a tremendous educator, and he was way up ahead of his time, really. But one thing that I remember, and I never told you this, Robert, but the fellow that was, I don't know if he died or he resigned or what, but there was a vacancy for, I think it's when Dooley died, I think.
Oh, yes.
When Dooley died, some of us, about 2 or 3 school board members, went over and talked to the board. They were Region 1 board, pero no había nada más que dos mexicanos on the whole board, you know. Era uno de Bronzeville and one from here. And said, why don't you put Al in? He was the assistant. No, they wouldn't hire him. They missed the opportunity, but he was the one that had the experience and everything else. They brought in an Anglo from, I don't even remember the name of the guy that brought, but he put him over here with Al Ramirez.
So,
But that's the way it was in those
Yeah.
years.
so bilingual education, you know, Mr. Trevino, when you were having that conversation in that suite
Uh-huh.
where, you know, you guys slept on the couch, probably on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who got the bed. Who got the bed?
I don't know. I don't
You
even
don't
remember where I slept.
But Ralph Yarborough left that meeting, and with his staffers, he began to write the legislation.
That's right.
And the way he wrote it was, and so I don't know this, but he must have been influenced by that conversation that night.
I'm sure it was.
This is the way he wrote it. He said that, because he was writing mostly about Mexican-American children,
Yes, sir.
that there are many Mexican and Mexican-American children who go to school who do not know English
Yes, sir.
and who are thrust into English without having developed their native language.
That's right.
So he then pushed for a bilingual education approach that would help those children build their own cognition, their own language skills in their native language,
That's right.
so that they could then master a
The
second language.
Second language. You're right.
So that was the model
Yes, sir.
that he was trying to push, which didn't exactly happen, because then it went to committee, the legislation went to committee.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people who did not want that. They didn't, in Congress, who
No.
didn't want Mexican-American or Spanish-speaking children or any children to be proficient in their native language. The whole
Mhm.
idea of bilingual education, as it came out,
Yeah.
was to move children into the acquisition of English.
Yeah. That's true.
And that's what happened.
That's what happened, and that's the way it is. And now there are a lot of people that are trying to do away with it. I'm sure you're aware of
With
that.
bilingual education.
Yeah. I think I mean, I don't want to bring politics into my presentation here, but there are some people that just don't want to spend money because there have been a lot of improvements in bilingual education, in education period, you know, everything. But there's still some people that just don't want especially the Mexican Americans, because you got to remember, right now, you're going to have Mexican Americans in every state in the United States. There's not a state that doesn't have a great deal of Mexican Americans living in their states. In a few years, there's going to be more Mexican Americans than Anglos in a lot of different places, states.
2020 in Texas.
Well, I'm sure it will be. I won't be here. I'll be watching from somewhere else, but I guess. But I wish I was 30 or 40 years younger, I mean, I would have loved to have been here then. But a lot had changed. I mean, you know, since we were just growing up here and then coming up, there've been some, you know, when you see, like right now, you have the mayor of San Antonio that may be potential vice president candidate. Who knows, you know? Whoever thought of a colored person being president of the United States? I mean, I wouldn't have been able to tell you in 1950 or when, and you know, when the civil rights came in, you know, there was not going to be anything like that happen, but it did. It happened.
Well, Jesse, one of the things I've heard you say is that you're less than impressed with the quality of leadership and vision and commitment on the part of some school boards today. So obviously you were a very idealistic person.
Oof, I'm sorry.
But beyond being idealistic, you were practical and you got things done. But what is it that you see on school boards today that makes you?
Well, one thing I'm disappointed in, and I'm sure you read about it. I don't have to tell you. There's some school board members that are going into the school board
Okay.
that are not interested, or maybe they're not as much interested in what they can do to help the education of the kids in the school district.
Yeah.
But they're going in to see what they can get for themselves. And that's been proven, you know, here some school board members have been indicted for certain things that they have done, you know, in the board. And that's the thing that disturbs me. But overall, the majority of them are sincere and they're trying to help the schools do a better job. But the state is the one that's cutting out a lot of money out of the education, and that affects all the school districts especially in the valley.
Yeah.
And it's going on, and I don't know how it's going to change, but I hope it does.
Does that organization you're in San Antonio, IDRA, is
Uh-huh.
it involved with policy questions about bilingual education and education policies in general?
Yes, we are. We are very much involved in it. In fact, in cases that we've had of discrimination and things like that, and our staff, we don't depend on the state or federal money or anything like that. We go out and get contracts with different organizations that have money. And our people, there's a fellow by the name Albert Cortez. He's been testifying in these cases for MALDEF and everything else, you know, that have been doing with education. And we are happy that he can do that because we want him to say what he's supposed to say. We're not involved in politics as such, you know, that we're going to go in and go for this candidate as a group or anything like that. We go in and testify and just give the facts because we got better information in our computers than TEA. TEA, the one thing that we've been working on is dropouts. TEA has a formula for dropouts that if a girl gets pregnant, a guy gets sent to the penitentiary, or he drops out of school, or like that, it
Doesn't count.
that doesn't count because you got married. I mean, you had a baby, or you know, whatever. But we don't. We say this many students started as a freshman, and this many graduated, and the difference is what they had. And it used to be 25-30% in some schools, you know. And TEA says no, it's 1 or 2%, real low, and it's wrong. And we've been fighting that, and we've come up with a program that is very successful, and we've had it for about 30 years, 35 years or more. But it's called the Coca-Cola Value Growth Program to prevent dropouts. Coca-Cola has given us several $1 million throughout the years for 30, at least 30 years. And what we do with those students, the student that gives the most trouble in class, who is absent the most, get the worst grades, and give a lot of trouble to the teacher and everything, we take those students and take them out and make tutors out of them. And they go teach the first and second graders. And they are paid so much an hour for doing it for twice a week or something like that for a week. We've had it in Brazil, we've had it in England, and we've had it here in the United States. We got it in La Jolla, we got for San Juan Alamo and at Couch Shelter and I think other schools. And now, and this year, we're going to start in Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, and Detroit, or something like that, in different places that the Coca-Cola has given us money for that. But the kids become somebody. They've been a failure all their lives. But now they're teachers. The kids, the kids in the first or second grade, they just love them, and they think that it's when they tell them that they're not going to be here next year because somebody else going to take, they hug them and everything. And we were featured in Barbara Walters' 2020 as one of the outstanding dropouts programs in the United States, and we're proud of that. And in Brazil, they had them. In fact, had a meeting in Brazil, and they had them in 42 schools, and they wanted to put them in all the schools. But we finally cut our ties with them because they were going to have their own people check themselves. But the secret to the thing is we involve the parents to take part, and the parents see the difference on those kids. They turn around, completely. In fact, one of the cops here, I don't know if he's working for you all, but he was working for the city of McAllen police station. He was from San Antonio. He said if it hadn't been for the Coca-Cola Value of Youth program, I'd probably been one of the gangs in the high school where he was at. And I think he just quit McAllen police and he went to one of the university or colleges. I don't know.
So you are you retired?
Yes, sir.
When
But
did
I
you
worked
retire?
a little. Huh?
When did you retire?
Oh, a couple of years ago. I had my insurance for 52 years. And I guess the thing that I'm most famous for, I guess Robert will say, is that I was president of the Tripa Club. I was the president. What else did I have?
You had all the offices.
All the officers together.
You held them all.
I had them all.
When did you create the Tripa Club?
Yes, I did.
When?
Because, I had it for 42 years.
And why did you create it? What was the inspiration?
I wanted to sell more policies, insurance. I didn't know enough people. I had joined the Cubanas, Knights of Columbus, and Fourth Degree Knights of Columbus, and just everything I could. And then I ran out of the Beach Syndicate, so I named this one the Poor Man's Beach Syndicate. So I would serve tripas, mollejas, porter sausage, and guisado. And then I had 2 ladies or 3 ladies making hot corn tortillas right off the grill there, and
Guacamole.
with guacamole, and they'll put some pico de gallo or chili, and they would eat all the time. And I only charged, I started with $3, but then I went up to $10. And I served them beer, soda water, and everything for that money. And I never allowed any open politics. They could give their cards and things like that, if you were running for something. But I never allowed them to say any speeches to the group because, in fact, I'm the only one that I know of that has a barbecue that has had 3 federal judges in attendance in one occasion. I had Reynaldo Garza, Vela, and Hinojosa. Hinojosa wouldn't miss one. I mean, he would go to every one of them. I had Tony, and then I started giving them awards. And that's when I think your dad got 2 instead of 1, because I forgot that I had given one, but I gave him another one. And I call him Tripero Distinguido. So anybody that would do something outstanding and everything, so name for a position or something like that, I would give him a Tripero Distinguido award, little plaque. And I gave it to Tony Garza, you remember? He was ambassador, but he was a Secretary of State, Republican. And I had your dad, and I had Rafael Flores and Dr. Caso when the city was going to close the city hospital that we had here, and they beat him on it. We outvoted, and we had it. Tony Sanchez, that ran for governor, he came in his private plane and landed here and got his award and then left.
Where did you have your Tripa Club meetings?
2 or 3 different places. There used to be a Whaling Park, and then there's a place here on 2nd Street and 83. It's called
Palmer Pavilion, no?
well, I had it there later,
Or is that a
but
different place?
this is out there by the water plant that's over here on 2nd Street, and that's why we didn't have the women in
Oh,
attendance because
is
there
that
was
Farmers Park or not, Jesse?
Farmers Park, yeah,
Farmers Park?
yeah, and we didn't have women because for 20 years because there was no facilities for women, you know. So then we had it at Whalens, and then I told everybody that my wife was going to picket the place if I didn't allow the women to go. So they went, and they were invited then, and they were invited all along. So letters with your dad was Al Ramirez would write real cute letters, you know, about current events that would go on places. One of them was when the Pope, the one that died, that was there the longest, when we was picked. We said there was white smoke and black smoke, and the fire said, when you see white smoke, you're going to have a triple club. So we had the triple club. Another time, your dad wrote that, let's see, how was that? He wrote that we sent Otho Brand and the Warrior Nuosa, the senator's brother, who had a H&H meets here, and they sent him to Russia, which they did. They went. But we sent him over there to see if they could buy some tripas for us in Russia. But they said that there was a shortage of tripas because they use them for inner tubes for the bicycle that they use in Russia. So we wrote things. He would think of a lot of things like that. I think he would wake up at night and start writing, you know. So he was my
Ghostwriter.
ghostwriter, right.
That's good. So, Mr. Trevino, just a couple more questions, but if you can think of your hero.
My hero? I don't know. I think one of the ones that distinguished himself, we went to New York about a month ago, and there's a play about Lyndon Johnson. I don't know if you read about it or heard about it. In fact, they have last night they had an award for performance in the
Tony
Broadway.
Awards.
Huh?
You said that the actor won a Tony Award.
It's a Tony Award. But you got to see that Kennedy could not do it. I mean, to pass the law of the civil rights and things that brought about all the changes that came about. And I think that's one of the things. And then Truman was another one that dropped the bomb. If he hadn't dropped the bomb, there would have been twice as many casualties as we had in Europe. There would have been more deaths, and they criticized him for it, but I'm real happy he dropped it because I would have taken part in the invasion. And I don't know if I'd be here. And there's people like that that I think of, but my years at the university, Dr. Sanchez was one of the mentors because he was really trying to we took courses at the university, but the ones we had from him, training and everything else, we would have the Attorney General of the state of Texas to go out there and debate. And we had several times, and they were going to build another school for the Anglos and leave the old one for the Mexican Americans in some town in East Texas over there. And he put him on a spot to where he said it would be illegal to do that. This is when things were not going so well, for the segregated school. The people would not go out and take the kids to sign up in Anglo schools. We had to send students by the university to sign those kids up and be denied, and then bring a court case on it. So it's just many people.
And what about the thing that you are proudest of?
Being married to my wife 62 years and have a son and daughter. I'm proud, and I'm proud to have served in the service. That it made me think of sacrifices that these people that are going through now. I mean, that are killed in battle and everything else. That just is hard to believe. That's still going on. But like the invasion, we just celebrated 70 years or something like that last week. There were a lot of good soldiers that died from Alice that I knew, when I was growing up, that were killed in that invasion. And I was just lucky because my brother said, don't sign up until they take you. And I did, and I guess that saved my life. But
Because you could have gone at 43.
yeah, I could have gone. And they would give you a diploma. I mean, there was no question about it. I remember my uncle had a cap and gown and received my cousin's diploma when I graduated. And he was in Europe already. And so that's the way it was in those days.
Wow.
But it was a hard time because, it was a depression and everything else. And I was lucky that I guess I know more people now, than I ever have, but when we came here to McAllen with a little baby, two babies, you might say, we didn't know a soul except one man that went to school with us. I'm sure you've heard of Hector Garcia with his brother, Bonnie Garcia, and he went to Mexico and studied to be a doctor, and he's a doctor I think in San Antonio right now. But he's the one that let us go into his house. That's the only person we knew here in McAllen. And now my wife and I have been active in a lot of things here, especially in both. But I have been mostly involved in education. I believe in education, and that's the only way we'll be able to progress in the future, to educate our masses. Because if we don't, they're going to go on the welfare or the penitentiary or, something like that we don't want. But you all are doing a good job here at University of Texas Pan American. By the way, that community college that I told you about, it's larger than the University of Texas Pan American. They're about 30,000 or something like that. You all about 20-something. But it's that is one of the greatest things that I've been proud of to have taken part in. And the president that's there now tells everybody, Jesse Trevino was the one that insisted that they have a community college with the academics.
Did you tell him that story?
Tell who? No, the
you-
lady.
Oh, sure, Shirley Reed.
Shirley Reed.
She tells that story, okay.
She tells that story.
Yeah.
Because she knows the story, and
Wow.
she was very happy then. But it's something that we needed, and we didn't have it. And we're invited all the time to go to those different functions. And we have a good board there that I think Alejo Salinas is there. And, the new one that just got on is Paul. That's with IBC, with
Paul Rodriguez?
Rodriguez.
Rodriguez.
Yeah. Paul was there, and the lady from Rio Grande.
Well, Mr. Trevino, thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you for asking me to come by, and I was certainly glad to meet all the students that were here.
Yeah.
And I hope that we'll do some good anyway. And I've said anything that I shouldn't have said, I'm sorry, but I think I said enough.
No, it was terrific.
And
Some stories that we would not hear otherwise.
yeah,
So thank you. Thank
you're
you
welcome,
for your
sir.
time.
Thank you.